go to the panel today. We are spread out. We've got people from all over the state of Texas, from Central Texas all the way down to South Texas, and then we're going to take it north to North Texas. First, let's go to South Texas, where we have District Missionary Duhart. Missionary Duhart, how are you doing this afternoon?
I am blessed and highly favored.
Yeah, we're so happy. Happy Mother's Day.
Well, thank you.
Happy Mother's Day. And I pray, hope and pray that they brought out all the checks and the cash and whatever they needed to bring out today to make this a happy Mother's Day.
Oh, they did. They did. I had a wonderful
It,
time.
it,
I even got breakfast in bed.
what? Well, you are
But I
blessed.
decided to get on up. I told them I was going to get on up, and they said, well, we were bringing you breakfast. So I enjoyed it, though. I enjoyed it.
Well, thank God. We can go there and we can go to Central Texas, where uh, the administrator of the Eccles Memorial Church, not only administrator, but she is also my mother and the mother of one of our other mothers that's on the line today, missionary Barbara Wilder. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, sir.
Happy Mother's Day.
Glad to be with you today.
Happy Mother's Day. And from the Potter's House, the preacher, teacher, evangelist, and elder, missionary, Elder Christy Dobbins. Elder Dobbins, how are you doing today?
I am well today. How are you all? And just glad to be here with all the great mothers on the line today.
Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I cannot go far without the mother of my children,
Yes.
missionary Sharon Gillis. Missionary Gillis, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. She's in another part of the house. We're trying to stay separate to do this broadcast, so she's not. She can't elbow me. She can't do any of those things. I'm free.
Oh,
I'm in a completely different part of the house. So today we came on. I kind of made a change at the end. Normally we'd be running out our broadcast and preaching, but today we're doing it a little bit different. I wanted to just celebrate mothers today. I wanted to celebrate mothers today and how influential mothers are. None of us can be here without our mothers, and the mother's role is so important. The mother's role is so important, and I wanted to just kind of talk about a few things today because motherhood, and I'll start with Mother Wilder. Motherhood is so different now than it was maybe 20, 30 years ago as far as what is expected from mothers. And I think sometimes, for one, at one point in time, women were not in the workforce, for one. And so now mothers have to be able to balance all of this. And I remember your mother saying, you can go out and do those things if you want to, but you still got to put on this mother's hat when you get back to the house. And I just wanted to ask you, you've raised two children, and I wanted to ask you, what are some of the changes or differences that you see in motherhood just from the way you were taught to now?
Well, there's a great change. Now, Mother Eccles said that you can go out and join forces, join the workforce, and do whatever you want to do. But remember that your primary job is in the home.
Mm.
So you're only taking on extra responsibilities when you go outside of the home. But there are major changes. Now children are taken out of the home at a very early age and put into
mm-hmm.
a group with preschoolers or kindergartners or whatever, or daycares, or even as babies they're taken out because of the mother's role. So it's very different, and bonding must be difficult because there are nurseries as we know, are very popular, and bonding with that child is it must be difficult to do, and then the child. I think now, I think that it adds a little bit of confusion because in those formative years is what we were trained, that you had to be there for those formative years to set the pace for the direction in which the child would go, teaching the child even things like love and how to handle himself, how to talk, and how to walk, how to begin life, and then teaching them, if you had more than one, you had a real good start of how to be in a group, because I think if you can survive the group at home, you can go out into the public and match up with them. It's that group at home that's so tough to deal with. But
Yeah.
yes, I see that,
Yeah.
and the love of God, respect for elders, all of those things are
Yes.
kind of missing today. And I think that the primary reason is because we separate the child so early from its mother.
And I think it's hard, and I'm getting ready to go to South Texas to missionary Duhart. I remember now. I'm not that old, but I do remember how we used to say yes, ma'am. We used to say yes, sir. There were certain things. I remember. I remember if you ask your mother something, and she was not responding in the speed that you wanted her to respond at as a child, you would keep on asking her. Finally, that would lead to, they say spanking now. It'd lead to a whipping. When I was, you couldn't rush her.
Whipping.
You had to approach your mother a certain way, and if she was talking to a grown person, you
You
couldn't.
didn't interrupt.
You just couldn't interrupt Mother Duhart. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir. That's the way that we were brought up. When grown people were talking, you were not in the vicinity. I used to hide under the table so I could listen until I got discovered, and then I didn't do that anymore. But you you learn that a child's place was not in with the grown-ups. Now you can start talking to a grown-up and a child will interrupt and take over the conversation, and actually they know more, I think, than sometimes the grown-ups do. And they'll correct their parents. I dared not do that. If my mother said something wrong, unless I got asked, is that the right way? I didn't interrupt and say, it didn't happen like that. That would be the last thing I remember saying. And you'd get a spanking, she'd say, excuse me, and then take us to the back. And then we'd get disciplined. We say disciplined now, but you got whipped right then and then brought back, and you didn't dare come in there until you heard that other person, that other grown up say, well, bye, I'll see you next week, or I'll see you tomorrow, whatever. But nowadays, I don't see that. Kids, it's like they're in control. They tell their parents when, what to do, what kind of stuff they want, and the stuff they don't like, and I'm not wearing that. You didn't buy that for me. And I'm going, ooh, I have to do like my daddy do. He used to rub his head all the time and walk around the rooms. He said, I got to get out of here because that wasn't his child. And that's what I have to do. I have to get out because that's not mine. But if they ask me, I'll set them down and tell them. If they ask me, well, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong? Ooh. I said, Lord, give me the words so I can, kind of explain it. Explain it to them. Kids do stuff nowadays I dare not have done when I was that age.
And it's so different, Elder Dobbins, because you're on the front line with a lot of mothers. The challenges are different now. The challenges that mothers face because unfortunately it's Mother's Day, and I often say that Father's Day is like the stepchild holiday. And but it's Mother's Day, and the role of the mother has expanded so much because we don't have
Yes,
fathers in place, right? And
that's
so
right.
the mother is
That's right.
trying to be the mother is trying to be the provider. The mother's got to go to
Mm-hmm.
football practice. The mother's got to
Mhm.
go
Yes.
to all of these things. And Elder Dobbins, I know because you work with a lot of women. Uh, Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that women are facing today trying to raise kids that maybe they didn't face it the same way 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
So Gillis, as we all know, our times have changed, and our children are encountering, for lack of a better word, the evils of this world much earlier than we did. We weren't introduced to certain things
Oh, that's true.
until we were much older, or perhaps even went to college. I know for me, I feel like I grew up in a small town. I grew up in the church. My mother was a missionary, Church of God in Christ. My mother was very strict. So it wasn't really until I went off to college that I even became exposed to things that were going on in the world. But these days,
Hmm.
children are being exposed more, which also impacts parenting. But one of the main things I've discovered, Pastor Gillis, is the gap between parenting has closed. What I mean by that is, my mother was 30 when she had me, and I was her first child. But now we have uh, ladies, and some not of their fault, or, they didn't know any better at the time. But
Hmm.
oftentimes now, you have a mother and a child in the same generation. And what I really see is there is a dearth of wisdom being passed down from generation to generation, and so it's escalated because one generation missed something, the next generation didn't fully receive it, and then once they pass on to their children, that continuation of missing something, lacking instruction, lacking wisdom, as you even stated, lacking the mother in the home. I think society as a whole, um, somehow there became a message that women who stayed at home were of lesser value than those women
Hmm.
who began to go out into the workplace. And I think the enemy was really subtle with that. And it caused the focus of the woman or the mother to not solely be for the welfare of her children or her household, but now her attention is spread so many different ways. And particularly if she's a single mother, she has added weight, added pressure. And so, with all of those compounded variables, it has made parenting look different than it did when I was being raised in Corsicana, Texas in the 70s and the 80s.
That's very challenging. It's hard for me to even fathom uh, how mothers are able to do some of the things they were able to do. And I've heard Mother Wilder's testimony uh, about raising her children while going to Baylor, while trying to work, and then you still had to keep all your church stuff, because today, if you have something to do, church kind of sometimes get pushed aside. But I know that when Mother Wilder was coming through, church didn't get pushed aside. You had to be able to do all
But
of it. And
hmm.
Mother Wilder, when did you sleep?
That was one of the things, you have to give up a lot. One of the things that I had to give up because the church had to be first, and the Lord had called me. I heard the Lord say, Elder Dobbins, I heard the Lord say to me, not preach but teach,
Mm-hmm.
and that caused me. And so I had to put in a lot of time from the beginning in studying of the scriptures because that's what the Lord
Mm-hmm.
called me to. I also had Baylor trying to get a degree that I didn't have enough sense to get before I got to this age and stage and condition. And I had to do that. And my children still ate, and they had to have clean clothes, and they had to have a clean home, and they had to go to their various activities. So sleeping was one of those things that I had to surrender because I had to wait until their day was done before I could get into all of the things that I had to do for the rest of the day because they still rode bicycles. Sister Sharon didn't want to, but we made her ride a bicycle. And they still wanted to go to the park. And they still had to have that time in for whoopings. You had I couldn't let that privilege be
Amen.
taken away for discipline and whipping. So sleeping was one of those things that I learned uh, to exist without. And the way that I did it, and I'll say this and then I'll be quiet, is one time Sister Sharon said to me, Mama, how do you do all of this? I know it's real hard, and I know that you must cry. And I said, I can't stop to cry because if I stop to cry, I'll never get up.
That's
So I
true.
had to avoid that
True.
because this was my lot in life. And then
Hmm.
I owe the church, I served the church full time from the time that I got here. Local, the district, the jurisdiction, and the national from the time that I
Hmm.
received salvation.
Yes.
Sister Gillis, your mom brought you up, and I know you watched. I know you watched your mother because you talk about it a lot. You talk about what you saw, and then you transformed into that mother. Tell
Hmm.
me a little bit about how important it was to have, and people, different people have different ones to sow into your life. You were blessed to have your mother to be the one to sow in when it comes time to raising children, is what I'm talking about. Because I remember I was there when we brought uh, Jamal home. We didn't know a whole lot about this. So how important was it to have your mother there?
I think that it was extremely important. I can't even fathom or imagine attempting to do it any other way because you just have to make it up as you go if you do. And so there was so many thoughts and plans that I had I thought were good. Mother Duhart that I found out was not the best idea after I got pulled to the side and explained to. And I have to say that more than it was a lot of ladies that poured into my life. People like Mother Duhart because uh, my children were always in church in the local, in the district, in the jurisdiction, and in the national. And so we had people from everywhere to stop and give us little nuggets and pour into us along the way. And I'm just so grateful for those times and those things that they said because I didn't understand it always then. But as time went on, I understood. I began to see what they were saying to me. And so I just am so appreciative of even bringing our kids up in church. I heard you, um, Missionary Duhart, talking about discipline. And I think a lot of times I was listening to Mother Wilder say she had to get off work and discipline was one of the things that she had to do. And I think a lot of times discipline falls to the side because we have so much to do. We got so much going on. And we, without proper time management, is really what it
Hmm.
is. Because certainly they had more going on. Church was 7 days a week and lasted till
Yes.
over past midnight. And there was work and there was school. And so
Hmm.
I think without the proper time
Hmm.
management, a lot of times we let discipline fall to the side because it's just so much. It's something added to your to-do list. When you get home, you just want to take a deep breath and exhale and sit down somewhere, but it's no time for that. You can't. And of course, church was first. So church was always in the picture. Church was leaving off church was not an option. Believe me, my grandfather was the pastor, and I tried on many occasions to have a talk with him by itself and explain why we should not have church tonight. And he explained to me that we were having church tonight. And so, but now I look back on that and I'm so appreciative of that. And I'm so grateful for for them not giving up and not getting tired. And I know it was
Hmm.
tiring. And I know it was
Yes.
time that you just felt like this was a waste because we went another way anyway. But I'm just so grateful that you didn't give up. And when I think back on even Christy's mom, she was like a mom to me also, because when I left my house and went to Christy's house, it was the exact same rules. It was no different. We tried it. We tried in between to get out every different kind of way we could think of to get out. But her mother was, she treated me the same as everybody. I could get a whipping at her house the same as she could. And then if I got a whipping at her house, my mother found out about it. That's another whipping for probably me and
Oh,
Christy.
yes.
So I'm grateful for those mothers, those people who took their job seriously and
Yes.
dedicated themselves to doing it, because if it hadn't been for them, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I certainly would not have had the good sense to put into my children the things that I put into them. It's just those things that were given to me, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I know how much Sister Gillis is very observative. She sees, she watches, and she looked at all of those things. The one of the things that helped me coming into the church was the older saints, testimony service, all of those kind of things. And I've heard over and over people talk about how they were in the struggle, how God helped them in the church and taught them the things that they needed to have in order to make it, like to make it to the next day. Elder Dobbins, and then I'm gonna go to Missionary Wilder. Elder Dobbins, you're dealing with your I know Closing the Gap ministry. You have to deal with a lot of women probably that's ready mothers. They don't know whether to go left or to go right. You know, because you
Yes.
can get, I get overwhelmed, and I have my wife that's helping me. I get overwhelmed. How is the church? How is the ministry helping some of those? Because I know you have some success stories too. How is the church helping them just to make it to the next day? And how is the church interfacing? How is your ministry interfacing with those mothers?
I know for me, for Closing the Gap particularly, what Sharon and I both had the privilege of was that we had a firm foundation. And I think sometimes other people don't understand our church language. So for someone that's listening, when you hear us say, or if you hear them say that the church was first, that's actually their commitment to God was first. That God was first. He was the head of their life. They didn't just accept that he was God, they let him be Lord, and they let him be Lord over their life to govern their lives. And so I think what I began to find as women began to come to Closing the Gap, that not only had we not passed down a lot of the natural things to a lot of the younger mothers, the things that we kind of thought were traditional for women, but they were actually God ordained roles for women. Not only had we not passed down that, we not passed down a true biblical foundation. And really, a lot of the gaps that I began to see that existed were as a result of not really fully being in relationship with God and allowing God permission to govern your life, to lead your life, to be obedient to Him, to be submissive to His will. And that a lot of times the house is out of order, whether you're married or whether you're single raising children, because you are out of order with God. And we don't lean unto Him for in all our ways, even to consult Him about our children, about our parenting. And so sometimes I'm ministering and I'm going to preach and I'm going to teach the word to make sure they're built up. But then there are times that the Spirit will lead me to have conversations that I say, or maybe just like Big Mama conversations, or the conversations I organically received growing up, whether it would be from Sister Wilder, whether it was from my mother, my Aunt Nell, my Aunt Ruth, or my grandmother. I begin to also find that a lot of women didn't have those role models in their lives that just gave them simple wisdom. And the Lord began to
That's right.
have me to not just give them the things of the Spirit, but that they had not been trained. And every now
That's
and then
right.
I have to stop and say, this is what's in order for your house. This is what's not in order. The man is still the head of the house. One thing I'd like to commend Sister Wilder on, growing up and observing her household, it's interesting. My mother only let me spend the night at two houses growing up without
Mm-hmm.
her. That was at my Aunt Nell's house, and that was at Sister Wilder's house. And when you looked at
Mm-hmm.
Sister Wilder and the transition she went through from being married to raising her children alone, that did not impact her dedication to God. She was not lesser than, she was not, no one, I never looked at her different because her lifestyle still exemplified the same characteristics of the Lord. And perhaps that's because she had a foundation and she had a father who loved her. But I see so many young ladies that when relationships don't go well or don't go the way they anticipated, that becomes the focus more than focusing on still serving God and still raising your children and still putting in your children what the Lord would have them. And so I think we had a dearth of not just spiritual mothers pouring in, but natural mothers telling young ladies how to take care of your children, how not to how not to keep your child away from his father. If his father is
Mm-hmm.
not someone that's violent and going to put them in harm's way, just because you're angry with them, just because your marriage didn't work, how to really love your children enough and sacrifice your personal feelings for the betterment of your children.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I know that was a long
So
answer.
true.
No, 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 that's
Yes.
fine. That's fine. That's fine. Mother
Yes.
Wilder,
Yes.
I know you were big. You came out and said that teaching was the forefront of your ministry, and teaching is training. And I know you've seen a lot over these years, and a lot of things have changed in the way we teach. How important is that foundation that you get from your mother in that home environment, and not only at home but in the church? How important is that foundation?
That's one of the vital points that's missing today.
That's
Now, when I
right.
came through, and I'm sure that Mother Duhart heard it too. Training
Mm-hmm.
begins in the womb, and
Yes.
that's what they taught us. They taught us to sleep right, to eat right
Mhm,
while you're carrying that child, because that training
Mm-hmm.
mhm,
starts in the room in the womb. And then when it comes forth, that's why we have to be there for the formative years. That's when you
That's
put into
right.
him the values that Elder Dobbins was just talking about. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you start putting it in at the time when they start walking and talking.
mhm,
In church we do it like this in the Sunshine Band. We take the Sunshiners off the laps of the mother and teach them how to spell the three-letter word God. And then we
Mm-hmm.
teach them to point to heaven, a point up where God lives. That's how life
mhm,
goes because we're forming a relationship. It's not time now to put them on the altar and tell them to speak in tongues. Their salvation rests in you
Yes.
and
mm,
what you put into them. So it's those formative years and what you start out with, and then you have to hold on to that. Now you can't do any of this without prayer, and you have
no.
to pray for yourself first so that you can have the strength to go through. And it takes a constant prayer life. Now, if you got a lot to come
Mm-hmm.
out, and Christy was just saying that my husband and I had separated, I had a lot to come out. And that was another
Mhm,
thing, Pastor, that took up the rest of my night. I had to walk the floor praying all night because
mhm,
self had to be brought under control. And
mhm,
it takes God to do that. And then
Yes. Yes.
uh, the other thing that we're missing is that we don't have community help anymore
mhm,
because the community doesn't see our lights shining. It
Mm-hmm.
used to be that they would say, what they say to us, you one of them Eccles children, and all of y'all
mhm,
believe in. They know what you believe in, what you stand for,
Yes.
and mothers don't go down to the school and see about things and get it straightened out. They go
mhm.
down to take the side with the child, and that's
Yeah,
wrong. They're letting the
True.
children lead
True.
them,
lead.
and,
Yes.
Mhm.
and children
Yes.
don't know how to lead a family. They don't have the
No.
That's right.
ability.
It's not their
They
job.
they, they don't have the instinct yet. The pastor
That's
alluded
good.
to the when his first child was born. I moved in with him because I remembered that I remembered what it was like when I had my first child, Sharon, and my mother had to
Mm-hmm.
come. I was a woman who had brought forth a child that had to have training in taking care of a baby. And see, and that I was a grown woman, a mother, but I still was not the mother that the child needed, and the parents needed to help. Children
Mm-hmm.
cannot, they cannot guide a home. They
No, they
shouldn't
No.
can't.
offer no suggestions at the training, the food.
Wow.
Am I right, Mother Newhart? They should
Amen.
stay out of it. Because first of all, they're not gonna eat what is right for them to eat.
That's
And
true.
Mhm.
that's all that
That's true.
we're concerned about. And so the community lost its respect for us because it saw
Mhm.
us acting like the world. Now they're not
Yeah.
helping us with our children. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
us didn't get to do a lot of things because the neighbors knew your daddy was the preacher. Am
Yes.
I right? And
True.
Amen.
because they knew what you stood for, and the
Mm-hmm.
unsaved
Yes.
folk respected us when we came down the street. Whatever they were doing, they quit.
Amen.
They
Amen.
stopped.
I've seen people put cigarettes in their hand and burn their hand when the when the preacher go by. But now they're
Mm-hmm.
might offer him a cigarette because
Ain't the
they
truth.
don't they don't have they don't have the respect that they should have. Now
Amen.
this is my last point. And now and then after we left the community, the church helped us with our children.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Amen.
We don't know how important the Sunshine Band was, and they
Yes.
said you put them in the Sunshine Band when they are on your lap, not wait until they can get up and sing. They may be way
Mm-mm.
down the road when they get up to sing, but you putting them in there to give them some guidance to God. The church is not to train the children how to wash dishes and how to work on their jobs. It's to train them
Mm-hmm.
in God's way. Training
Yes.
is something that is given by God to parents, and whether the parents are with the children or without the children, when they go before that judgment seat, He gonna call up that rule that He gave.
Hmm.
You left them,
Amen.
or you didn't do it,
Amen.
but I gave the rule to you to do it. So, and
Amen.
then the church designed and helped us to take them through their stages of life. That's why it's so different today because we've
That's
lost
right.
training on every level,
On every
and it
level.
started on every level, and it started in the
Amen.
home. The
Amen.
baby is not being trained. I've seen little
Mm-hmm.
babies, little bitty babies, just starting to walk, turn around and hit their mama. Now y'all know the baby.
Hey.
You
Amen.
didn't allow that because he had to
Mm-mm.
learn early. You can't hit mama.
Mhm.
That's wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true.
And when daddy is not there and daddy is working, you don't allow your children to talk about daddy and to make fun of daddy.
Mm-mm.
The Bible says you
Mm-mm.
teach
Mhm.
them to love him and respect him because he's taking care of them. But
Amen.
now children are running it, and that's why that's the major reason why we're in the condition that we're in because we don't have anybody with any experience and with any know-how, with any skill.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Children are only what they want for the moment, and in the next moment it changes.
That's so
Yeah.
true.
You know,
So true.
it's very obvious that this job, this motherhood. First of all, let's say establish motherhood is a job that's given by God. All right,
Mhm.
Yes.
this is a
Amen.
God-given uh, appointment. And you
Yes, it
used to hear
is.
it said all the time that the mother's job is never done, and
Mm.
I've found that's even after 18. Mother Duhart,
Amen.
your children are past 18, and I'm imagining, and I know your husband has gone on to be with the Lord now, but I'm imagining that your job as mother, where it may have changed than when they were babies, you still own this
Mm-hmm.
job, and just
Yes.
talk to us how
Mhm.
that role has changed and the challenges of your role now as you still mother.
Well, when they were little or younger, you could just tell them. If there
Hmm.
was no answering back or whatever, you just told them what to do and they did it. When they get older,
Mhm.
then you have to let God do
Mhm.
part of that training because you
Mhm.
realize you can go as a mother, we can go so far.
Yeah.
but you're not with them. I used to hear my mother praying, Lord, trouble their mind, trouble their heart, turn them around, let them listen to you. Now I understand why she did that, because she was letting God go to places where she couldn't go. You're not
She
going to be
couldn't
in
go.
that room at night with them, but God will. And you're not going to be in their thoughts and stuff, all during the day, but God can speak to that mind and speak to that heart. And I can, when my son, I have one, I said, we're still praying for him. But when he got in trouble and we had to go before the judge, and the judge told him, before he even got started with his case, he said, however this comes out, I know that's not how your mother taught you. And that was, I graduated with the judge. And I used to have prayer meetings at school. We weren't supposed to, but sometimes that's what you had to do. But to live the life where people can expect that they know you and they know how to expect better from your children, because this is not how they were taught. And so, he had to go to jail. I never had anybody go to jail. We had to live through all of that and do all of that kind of stuff. But the thing that my mama sat down and told me, she said, this is not what you planted. And I had to, she said, this is not what you planted. So don't let the devil make you try to accept the harvest, because this is not what you put in the ground. And she said, so don't accept him lying and stealing and being on drugs and being an alcoholic and all of that. Don't accept that, because that's not what you planted. And then that kind of, because what did I do? What could I have done better? I did what I was supposed to do. Now, what they do with what you teach them, that's not on you. And as parents, we have to realize that, because you'll be depressed all the time because you think I could have, should have, would have done better than what I'm doing. But the thing of it is, what did you teach them? What did they see you doing? Did they see you steal something and put it in your pocket and act like, because I used to wash for people, and I'd find anywhere from $50 to $200 in their pants pockets. But when the people came to get their clothes, they got their money back. Now, did they see you put that money in your pocket when you didn't, it didn't belong to you? It's what they see you doing. And then if they go wrong, that's not going to fall at your feet, because you taught them.
Yes.
I took mine and we went to see people on drugs, how to do, how they look coming off of it, how they look when they get hooked. We saw movies doing that. I had friends that would let me go into these places so they could see it firsthand. Now, my daughters, man, they threw up, they did everything. They didn't want to see that. But that son, the one, he was enthused by it, man. He got excited. And we was talking, how did he like that? Because that's the way his mind was going to go. That's what he wanted to do. He thought that was the life. But that's not what I taught them. And my mama said, if they ever get in trouble, don't let it be said it's because you didn't tell them, because you didn't teach them. And that's what my mother, that's what she taught me. And so I can't help but revert back to what I've been taught. It got her through some hard times. So it got me through some hard times. My husband was here. I was married, but 99% of the time, he was not here. He was off. So I couldn't wait till he came back to straighten a lot of stuff. I had to step up and be grown. Like my mama said, you the mama. So you're going to have to straighten this out. And I thank God for my mama. She helped me a lot. A lot of stuff didn't sound good, didn't feel good, but I thank God for the teaching that I got from my mother and from the other mothers that were in the church. They kept me straight.
That's so awesome, District Missionary, and that's why I think this role, I said, is ordained by God. It's so important that we respect this role, and that's the word that I want to talk about here for a minute, Sister Gillis, and I'm coming to you. I think, I think this role that God has created, not only is it not respected from the outside looking in, but I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of mothers that don't respect the role of
The
mother.
role as well.
And I think,
That's true.
and I'm making that judgment based on
Hmm.
behavior. You know, you could tell
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
by how somebody respects something themselves, even by their behavior. Can you talk about? Because one thing is for sure, and my wife, we've been married. It'll be 30 years. It'll be 30 years here in a few months. Uh, my wife respects her mother. And
Yeah.
Yes.
can you talk about,
Yes.
Sister Gillis, how important it is to respect yourself and respect this role that you were given?
Yes.
I think you hit right on it when you said that I respect my mother. So I was taught early to respect my mother, and in that respect, whether we realize it or not, is where we learn to respect ourselves. And so
Yes.
a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times the role is disrespected, and I think it's mostly due to just ignorance or a lack of understanding. Because if we understood,
Amen.
the Bible talks about adultery being a lack of understanding. If we
Mm-hmm.
understood what we were doing and what we
Hmm.
actually contributed and what how important the role that we play is, and I don't even think it takes maturity to really understand it. And so when you first become a mother, you probably can't grasp it, but God, being who He is, He always places somebody in your life, somebody around who can impart to you
Amen.
things and wisdom. And I heard District Missionary Duhart say that it didn't always feel good, but it's
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
somebody there that can give you
Yes.
what you need. And those things are so important because that respect for what you do is what's going to cause your children to grow up and have respect for society, respect in the workplace, respect in the classroom. And
Amen.
there's a difference. I'm not saying that they won't do things or get out of the line. She talked about even as far as
Hmm.
jail, but I guarantee you in jail they're different than the person that did
Yes.
not have any training. And so
Hmm.
it makes a difference no matter where you go, because I used to hear my grandmother say, you don't know whether or not you'll have the opportunity to raise them or not. You need to raise them so that somebody else can raise them. And so
That's right.
I always kept that in mind, is you don't know, tomorrow's not promised. And so
Amen.
Yeah.
my thing that I always say to them, and they sometimes get upset, is when I'm gone, these words
Mm-hmm.
got to be in your mind even when I'm not there, even when I'm not
That's
around.
Mm-hmm.
right. That's right.
I have to say things. I think about so many times. Elder Dobbins' mother, she's gone on to be with the Lord, and I think about all of the things that she said and did that carried
Amen.
us to this point. That if
Yes.
I had to be
Yes.
that prepared to put into a person enough to take them on from 17 on, I don't know if I would have done enough or if I've done enough. But what she did, it carried over. With the help of her,
Yeah.
she has her aunts, but it
Mm-hmm.
carried over until today. And so that's when you think about a job as important as that, it's due a lot more respect than it's given, but the
Amen.
respect really comes from the inside, from you. You cause
Yes.
people to respect. And so
Yes.
even when they don't agree, it's the same as your life. They don't necessarily agree or understand why you do the things you do, but at the end of the day, they turn around and they respect you for the stance that you take, respect you for your ideas and thoughts. And so I'm just grateful to God to even have had the mind, because I didn't have that mind in the beginning. I thought I'm going to get a job and I'm going to do this, this, this. And my focus really,
Hmm.
to be honest, was all on me. And the
Mm-hmm.
baby was just like a purse or something that you had. But I found out that is that everything depended on me, and so it was not about me at all. None of it,
No,
Mother Duarte, was about
no.
me at all. And so I found I had to. I heard you say grow up. I had to
Yes.
grow
Mm-hmm.
up, be grown, and get to church and get them in classes and get them, to the places
Hmm.
they need to be. Because we'll get them the places they need for school, but sometimes we're
Mhm.
lackadaisical when it comes to getting them to the church things that they need to be in.
Amen.
Mhm.
Because there are some
Amen.
things that are
Mm-hmm.
being imparted in that Sunday
That's
school
true.
class. My Sunday
Mhm.
school teacher had a switch,
Mm-hmm.
and so she imparted some things. I had to listen. She imparted some things in that class, and so it was necessary for me. It's just so many people that have impacted my life until I can't imagine
Yes.
trying to do it by yourself. And that's
Mm-hmm.
another
Hmm.
thing
By yourself.
in our efforts to have a life of our own and to be so fulfilled in my own life. Sometimes we isolate ourselves and put ourselves in a
Mm-hmm.
position where we don't have the help because you're not around somebody that can just walk up to you at church or in the store and say that baby is teething when you didn't know
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
what was wrong with him and you was ready to just drop the baby off. But somebody can help you if you'll take the help. Somebody is
Yes,
there
they
to help
will.
you, but a lot of times the
Yes.
help we
Mhm.
don't get is because we're not there. I know Christy knows this because she is working with young ladies and teaching young ladies, but a lot of times the ones that need the most help are the ones that's not
Mm-hmm.
there. And so a
Yeah.
lot of times the help we need
Mhm.
is because we're
Mhm.
not present to get the help we
That's
need.
Mhm.
right.
If we were around, people would reach out and help us. They
Yes.
will
Yes,
reach
they
out
Mhm.
and they'll
would.
help you
Mm-hmm.
in so
Hmm.
many ways that you can't even imagine. Somebody will
Mhm.
stop you, pull you to the side. Somebody, I can remember being at many national conventions and somebody just pulled me to the side and put money in my hand,
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
not knowing that we had to go and buy lunch after. We did have to feed, but everybody knows when you
Mhm.
have babies, you got to feed the babies. And
Hmm.
so
Mhm.
I'm just grateful for so many people along the way that some of
Yes.
whom I know the
Amen.
name, some of them I don't.
Amen.
But I'm so grateful to those people. And I'm finding out as I go. Sometimes I go to the conventions and I hear people that I didn't even know were aware that we existed say to me, I
Hmm.
remember you and I remember your children and I prayed for you
Mm-hmm.
and I pushed,
Mhm.
and I pushed you and I did
Mhm.
this for you. And I'm so grateful to all of those people because there is help if you
Mhm.
Yes.
present yourself available, if you
Yeah.
make yourself
Amen. Amen.
We're, we're,
Amen.
we're moving toward a close, and I want to go around the horn. I'm going to start with you, Elder Dobbins. Your history is rich in the church, and you've matriculated a long way throughout your journey, your ministry. What is something that if you could speak to, and maybe I'm going to push this question to everybody. If you could speak to that mother yourself, that
Mm-hmm.
the past Elder Dobbins, if you could say something to yourself uh, 20 years ago or 25 years ago when you were that young mother, what would you say? What would you say to yourself?
I think the first thing I'd say is I want to piggyback off something Sister Wilder said, talking about the formidable years. It is now proven statistically if children aren't introduced to Christ from 0 to about 8 or 9 years old, it is much harder to win them as an adult. And I'm going to speak for the church kids who went to church all the time and grew up in church and received the Holy Spirit at an early age, knew you were called at an early age, but for some reason the enemy tricked you and made you think you could run for a little while. I would speak to my younger self and say, I cannot run God. I would surrender early so that I could uh, not fast track, but grow into and develop into who I was called to be at an earlier age. I did take my children to church when they were young because that's what I was trained to do, but I didn't always exemplify what I was taking them to church and teaching them, particularly my older son. But I would like to tell someone not to give up. If you feel like you missed something from those 0 to 8 or 9 years old, that God is faithful, He is just. All I would do was take a moment to acknowledge it to God in my closet, prayer closet. I would repent to Him, and God has promised to restore unto you the years that the cankerworms and the palmer worms that they and the locusts that they ate up. And so sometimes we have impacted our children by our decisions. So for that parent that thinks they didn't, mother that thinks she didn't make all the right decisions, there is hope. I'll sometimes joke about things that I did when I was younger to my older son, and he's looking at me like, I don't remember that, because God restores, that I've walked circumspectly before the Lord, and He's seen me live out my life before God, that even in the season that I thought I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do, God made up the difference. The other thing I would like to echo that Sister Wilder said is it takes prayer. If you're going to be a good mother, it's going to take prayer. Prayer first. I like how she worded it. And she is such a teacher in laying it down so that anyone could understand clearly what she was saying, that it takes prayer. Prayer first for yourself. We all know we love our children and we want the best for them, but sometimes women will forego what God has for them and just pray to push their child. When actually the best thing you can do for your child is to live out who God has called you to be before them. So I would just admonish you to go to the Lord in prayer, to consecrate yourself before Him, to spend time not just in prayer. This is not popular. It sounds old school, but it's not. It's Bible. It is to fast, to push away your plate, to sacrifice some of your human pleasure in order to really hear a word from the Lord, especially if you are a single mother, so that you can hear God clearly for your life, for your household, for your children, and it can save
Amen.
you time. The Bible says in the book of James, if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who will give it to him liberally. It will save you time if you don't have older women to pour into you. The Bible is filled with everything you need. Everything you need that pertains to life and godliness is in the book. And just ask God for wisdom on how to raise this child, wisdom for the child that seems like they're acting out, wisdom for the child who someone has told you is special needs. All of these things we need to really seek God for and to really hear for His wisdom. Yes, we can accept natural knowledge. I'm not negating that if a child needs to go to the doctor, but sometimes we've substituted man's words for God's words. And God knew your child and knew you from the foundation of the world. And if anyone knows the blueprint for your life, it is God. So I admonish you to go back to prayer or to start your prayer life. Fast, seek God, and ask Him for wisdom. For wisdom is the principal thing. God bless you.
Mother Duhart, what would you say to your early self? What would you say to that young lady?
Just because somebody is offering you instructions on how to do something, don't be offended and learn how to take instructions from older women because they have something
Yeah.
to teach you. And I thank God, if it hadn't been for my mother, I was telling the girls the other day, I said, I thank God that my mom was still alive when I was having my children. I said, because she came in and she could say stuff in a funny way, but then after you sit down and listen to what she said,
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't being funny at all.
Mm-hmm.
She was, she was really instructing. And I learned a
Mm-hmm.
lot from her because I was here by myself with children and my husband was gone. A lot of stuff happened. You want to scream and call him on the phone and tell him. And she said, what is he going to do? He's over there in Louisiana. You're over here in Texas. What's he going to do? And he was climbing that big tall thing where the oil people go up there. She said he's climbing that. He don't need to be knowing about this. And that taught me, you know, you're here and you're the parent. So you know
Yeah.
what? Buckle up and go for the ride. And I learned how to take instructions from her. That didn't make me less of a woman, but
Yes,
it
Mm.
yes,
made
yes,
me
yes.
more of a praying woman. because that's what she would do. She'd come in
Mm-hmm.
praying, and then she'd lay hands on me. And then when she'd get through, I'd feel a whole lot better because when stuff first happened, you're like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
And she'd
Mm-hmm.
come in just so calm. And I'm looking at her and I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, but she's not even, yeah, she was. But she wanted you to know that God was in control. And that's one thing that she was saying, about prayer. Prayer is the keynote. Keep God
Hmm.
first in all things that you do.
That's
And
good.
he'll never leave you or forsake you.
That's good, District Missionary. Mother Wilder, same question. What would you say to the former you?
The former me.
Yeah,
uh,
that new mother.
oh, I'd say shut up and listen. That would be the former me. That's what I'd be talking.
Yes.
But what I would say to the young women is that when you put yourself into a different category, you put yourself into a
Yes.
category of creation, the way God
Mm-hmm.
created you to be. So now
Mm-hmm.
you've got to learn
Mm.
how to follow. That's it. You got to follow, because you got to
Amen.
help whoever you married. And then when you bring children, you have to keep this primary in your life. Whatever your aspirations were, you heard Sister Gillis say it. Whatever your aspirations were, they now become secondary because
Yes.
you
Hmm.
brought a child into the world. I didn't say
Amen.
that you couldn't go on to receive an education, but now your primary function is going to be the raising and training of that child. It's really true.
Amen.
The hand that rules, I mean, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world,
Yes.
and we
Amen.
have to
Amen.
we have to prepare them now. Now the child becomes primary, and his
Mm-hmm.
cares and his needs, and where he's going and what he's going to be. And I'm saying he, meaning mankind, what
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be. That becomes the function now. Now, your your career when you got married was to be a wife and a mother. You had a career. You just wanted that other career to go with it. But
Amen.
but if you can
Amen.
remember that when you bring them in, now your primary function is the welfare and the growth and the training of that child. However it turns out, you're gonna have a part in it. Now, if
Amen.
it turns out and goes down the road to the wrong path, like you were headed, and
Mm-hmm.
his takes him further, or hers takes her further into and even
Mm.
fall into the hands of the law, get you some shoes that walk around in prison, because you got to go down to the prison. That's where your child is. You got to
Mm.
hang with them
Amen.
until they can
Amen.
come to their senses. You can't let them
Yes.
go.
Yes.
And you got to
That's
stick
right.
with them no
Mm.
matter what their condition and what their mindset is and what their thought
Yes.
is and how rebellious they are. You got to stay on your
Mm-hmm.
knees and stay with them until they can get straightened out. Then you can
So
prepare to go
true.
to heaven. But don't try to go to heaven leaving bad children for somebody else to have to deal with. But you can deal with them if I would say to you to remember now, when you're married, you get into the God's created world of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You step right up there
Wow.
into the high spot. And then when you become mother, you become the future of the world. So
That's
Yes.
right.
your role becomes a very and extremely important. You're not, and you don't get. Oh, by the way, you don't get paid for it until later.
No.
Try to train them to be millionaires if you want a lot of money, because that's the only way you're gonna get him. Is if they
So
get
true.
paid away.
That's good. That's good. That's good, Sister Gillis. You've almost raised six. Almost raised six. We I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. What would you say to the 23-year-old Sharon Gillis with a new baby and with all the adversity that comes there? What would you do to encourage her?
I think the key word that I heard over and over again was listen. I would say to
Mm.
listen because there's so much wisdom all around you if you'll listen. But the problem
Mhm.
is, I had a whole plan and a way that I was going, and something in my mind that was the right way, and none of it was right. None of it was correct. And so I would say to surrender yourself. I
Yes.
Mhm.
heard
Mm.
over and over talk about
Amen.
prayer. It's no way to
Yes.
Mhm.
surrender
Yes.
yourself without prayer. And so
Without
Amen.
prayer
prayer.
is the key. And
Yes,
so
it is.
I used to hear Mother Eccles say that the Holy Ghost makes you teachable. If you find yourself in
Mm.
a position that you cannot be taught, nobody can tell you nothing, then I'm
Hmm.
afraid you need to go back and do your first works over. Get the Holy Ghost again,
Amen.
because
Mhm.
it's going to take
Yeah.
that. It takes that humility, that humbleness, that willing to take down and listen
Amen.
Mhm.
to the things
Amen.
that
And
are being
listen.
said and
Listen.
done. I mean, it's so
Listen.
much in listening. Not only are people saying things, but life is showing you things. Your children are teaching you
Hmm.
things
Yes.
if you can just listen.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes we're just in
Listen.
such a fast forward mode. You know, we know everything. I live with several people that know everything, but we know so much until we can't listen. Somebody's telling you,
Hmm.
and you talking because you can't listen. And so I would just that would be if I had a T-shirt, a hat, I would just say, "Listen, just listen."
Yes.
That's good. That's good. Ladies, mothers, I appreciate y'all so much. This was very
Thank you.
rich today, and
It was.
our prayer is that we can reach these mothers, get them in a place where they can make better decisions, and the ones that are
Amen.
making good decisions now, we want them to continue to make good decisions. And the
Yes.
Bible talks about who is to do the training. And
Mhm.
I have a mixture here on because we're in different places. All of y'all are in different places in this journey, but your role as mother never stops. And I
Hmm.
just
Never.
appreciate, I applaud you today on Mother's Day. Y'all have done a wonderful job. Everybody
Thank
on
you.
this call has sold into our lives, into the lives of our children. We appreciate you so much. And my prayer is that hopefully some people will go back and rewatch this and get the strength that Sharon and I were able to get to keep pushing forward. Again, thank everybody for watching
Amen.
today. Thank you for tuning in to the broadcast today. You can reach I'll put everybody's social media contacts. Those of us that are doing social media contacts, I'll put all of that in the chat below. Again, make sure that you share this. Put it in a watch party. This is some information that men
It
and
is.
women need to get. Well, men
Mhm.
and women need to get this information. Thank you for tuning in. Continue to pray for women all over the world. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Happy Mother's Day. This is Pastor Leroy Gillis, and we are signing off. God bless you.
God bless you.